At the time, I was 18, working as a VT. For those who don't know what that is, VT stands for Vet Tech. I had already been working at the hospital for around 2 years. I spent most of my first year at the animal hospital, working in the back, in the kennel area. Think of it as a hotel for dogs, just not as nice. After a year, I get moved to the treatment area, where I begin my real work as a VT. After some time, you sort of become desensitized to all of the animals' deaths. After an animal is put down, we have to bag them and tag them, which consists of us placing the bodies in a bag with tags that read private or community, etc. Tags are coloured pink, yellow, red, respectively, of course. There is one day that I will never forget. At the time, my shift was almost over, and I was getting ready to leave. Until the receptionist came running in saying, "Emergency, stray dog hit by a car, driver brought him in." I begin to prep, quickly putting on my gloves, crash kit ready, operating room and table cleaned and prepared. They bring the dog in, and to my shock, it's in a horrible, bloody mess. Something odd happened. In a weird way, I felt like I knew the dog, almost like an old friend. But I pushed the thought away. The dog was a middle-aged yellow lab. My first thought is that the dog needs to be euthanized ASAP. I can see that there is no hope for the poor girl. The guy who brought him in showed us the dog's name tag. It had the name Crumpet on it. That's when it hit me. This was my dog. She must have gotten out the yard again and was hit by this guy's car. I then begin to hold my dog like an idiot as it barely gasps for air. Everyone starts to yell at me. I start to feel her blood soak into my scrubs. I can tell she is already so close to death. I look into her eyes and can tell she's in a great deal of pain, and there is no hope to save her. I've been working there long enough to know when a dog is too far gone. My shock begins to pass, and I fall on my knees. I begin screaming, "This is my dog," over and over again. Everyone in the room is just staring at me. After some time of crying, my other VT friend grabs my dog. He knows it. I know. Everyone knows it. He then hands me the euthanasia needle saying, "You should be the one to do it. It's the right thing." As I inject her, I just think back on all the memories of her. The first day we brought her home, having to house train her, all the messes she made, all the toys she destroyed. All of that has led to this one moment. Her final moments, at least it's with me. I then whisper in her ear as the needle goes in saying, "It'll be alright." Minimizing her pain was my only priority. I cradled her, stroked her head, until she passed away. After she died, nobody bothered me, and I just went home. I was covered in her blood. It's even on my face a little. My parents know my VT lingo. I told them all of it when I first started 2 years ago. I walk in, and my parents have no clue. They don't even know that Crumpet got out. They look at me and say, "Another bag 'em and tag 'em?" I immediately break down and cry. R.I.P. Crumpet, 2008 to 2015. I still have her dog bed in my closet. Everyone in the apartment complex I lived in knew who Ugly was. Ugly was the resident tomcat. Ugly loved 3 things in this world: fighting, eating garbage, and, shall we say, love. The combination of these things, combined with life spent outside, had their effect on Ugly. To start with, he only had one eye, and where the other should have been was a gaping hole. He was also missing his ear on the same side. His left foot had appeared to have been badly broken at one time and had healed at an unnatural angle, making him look like he was always turning a corner. His tail had long since been lost, leaving only the smallest stub, which he would constantly jerk and twitch. Ugly would have been a dark grey, tabby striped type, except for the sores covering his head, neck, even his shoulders, with thick, yellow scabs. Every time someone saw Ugly, there was the same reaction. That's one ugly cat. All the children were warned not to touch him. The adults threw rocks at him, hosed him down, squirted him when he tried to come to their houses, or shut his paws on the door when he would not leave. Ugly always had the same reaction. If you turned the hose on him, he would just stand there, getting soaked until you gave up and quit. If you threw things at him, he would curl his lanky body around his feet in forgiveness. Whenever he spied children, he would come running, meowing frantically, and bump his head against their hands, begging for their love. If you ever picked him up, he would immediately begin suckling on your shirt, earrings, or whatever he could find. One day, Ugly shared his love with the neighbor's huskies. They did not respond kindly, and Ugly was badly mauled. From my apartment, I could hear his screams, and I tried to rush to his aid. By the time I got to where he was laying, it was apparent Ugly's sad life was almost at an end. Ugly lay in a wet circle, his back legs and lower back twisted grossly out of shape, a gaping tear in the white stripe of fur that ran down his front. As I picked him up and tried to carry him home, I could hear him wheezing and gasping, and I could feel him struggling. I must be hurting him terribly, I thought. Then I felt a familiar tugging, sucking sensation on my ear. Ugly, in so much pain, suffering, and obviously dying, was trying to suckle my ear. I pulled him closer to me, and he bumped my palm with his head. Then he turned his one golden eye towards me. I could hear the distinct sound of purring. Even in the greatest pain, that ugly, battle-scarred cat was asking only for a little affection, perhaps some compassion. At the moment, I thought Ugly was the most beautiful, loving creature I had ever seen. Never once did he try to bite or scratch me, or even try to get away from me, or struggle in any way. Ugly just looked up at me, completely trusting in me to relieve his pain. Ugly died in my arms before I could get inside, but I sat and held him for a long time afterwards, thinking about how one scarred, deformed little stray could so alter my opinion about what it means to have true pureness of spirit, to love so totally and truly. Ugly taught me more about giving and compassion than 1,000 books, lectures, or talk show specials ever could. And for that, I will always be thankful. He had been scarred on the outside, but I was scarred on the inside. And it was time for me to move on and learn to love truly and deeply, to give my total to those I care for. Many people want to be richer, more successful, well-liked, beautiful. But for me, I will always try to be ugly. I was out one night in December, around midnight. It was terribly cold, being the day after Christmas. I sighed deeply, almost amused at seeing my breath. I was tired, walking home from my friend Ricky's house. We just got done eating a ton of snack food and playing Pokemon, battling over and over like when we were kids. How I miss those days. I'm 17 now and kind of a nerd. I don't have a lot of friends, but I cherish the ones I do have. I don't have a girlfriend, but I do have a crush or two. Anyway, I loved taking walks at night. It was so quiet and peaceful. I also really loved the cold air caressing my cheeks and fingers. I sighed again, almost home. Just a block away was my house, where I lived with my mom and two bratty younger sisters of 15 and 10. Part of me didn't want to go home, worried mom would catch me up late and scold me for being out alone. Suddenly, I saw her. She was pretty, kind of short but not a child. She had wavy blonde hair and was wearing satin pants and a light blue tank top. As I got closer, I could see her face. Her pale skin was almost white as snow, with piercing green eyes. Her lips and fingers were blue. She looked very sad and very cold. I imagined it was because she was barefoot and had nothing on her arms. As I got about 3 feet away from her, she took a step towards me and said, in a chilling, soft, yet raspy voice, "Can you help me find my cat?" I shrugged and tried to smile. "Sure, where do you think he is?" She pointed to a truck parked in a driveway. I nodded and walked with her to the car. Before walking around it, I took off my jacket and offered it to her. "Here, you're gonna freeze to death." She smiled sadly, looking up at me. After a short pause, she whispered, "I already have." By then, I was getting freaked out by her. I didn't believe in ghosts or anything, plus I could see her breathing. I put my jacket around her shoulders, and for some reason, I was relieved when it stayed there. I made my way around the car. Sure enough, there was a kitten underneath. I reached in and pulled him out to my surprise. He must have been focusing on her. He purred in my eyes and eagerly jumped to the girl when he saw her. She smiled at me, joyful tears now cascading down her snowy beige skin. She grinned wide and scratched the cat's ears. "Thank you so much." I smiled back, glad that she was happy. She turned to walk, and it was in the direction I was heading in. I made conversation after a moment, briefly reaching over to pet the kitten. We talked about the weather, work, music, and the like. She was 17, named Hannah. She was out for a long time looking for a cat, freezing in the cruel December air. Of course, our talk was very short-lived, since I was close to home. "Jack," she said, "thank you so much for helping me." She grinned. "Of course," I said, blushing. She reached over and kissed my cheek. Her blue lips were like ice on my numb face. I shivered at the touch, though flattered that she did such a thing. I went to stammer a reply, but she had turned. Her words echoed in my mind. And then I realized something. "Wait, I didn't tell you my name. How did you—" I asked, watching her walk away. She turned to look at me, smiled, and then vanished.